So Nicola, we still have people filtering through at the moment, but I'll kick things off
No
anyways,
problem.
as I'm conscious of the time just. So hi everyone, and welcome to the second webinar today. Today's webinar is about creating emotional connections via branding and digital storytelling. And I'm delighted to, I suppose, introduce you to Nicola Barrett. Nicola she's from the west of Ireland. She's a Galway girl, and she has, I think it's over 17 years experience in the branding industry, I suppose, particularly within the food and drinks sector and consumer products. Now, Nicola has worked with some world famous brands such as Jameson whiskey and also Dove, and recently, I think a few years back, Connacht Rugby, which she'll talk about a lot today. So I'm very, very excited. I'm not going to hold you back any further, Nicola. I'll let you kick off, and I'm delighted to have you on board.
Super. Thanks a million, Alison. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and what an intro and opening the session this morning. Noreen talked about it's Misha Mehain Kate Tussett. This is me. Who are you? So hopefully for the next hour or so, as Alison said, I'm just going to bring you through, I suppose, my story, being from the west of Ireland, traveling all over the world, and fundamentally coming back here to the west of Ireland, to the rural west of Ireland, to work as, I suppose, a female entrepreneur and a female leader. So if you just bear with me 1 second, I'm going to start sharing my screen, which will hopefully tell my story. Just 1 second as I get set up from the beginning. And then I just have to say settings. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that now. And as I said, raise your hand, or if there's any questions. As I said, I'm going to talk about my story through the last almost 20 years now. I'm getting old, but 20 years of brand building, building strong brands, both small brands, local brands, international, global icons. And I suppose just the differences in growing brands throughout the world over the last 20 or so years. But essentially, the major theme of my story today is all about driving emotional connections. Because one of my big things that I say is, people manufacture products, but we sell brands. And brands only exist in the hearts and minds of our consumers. So really, it is about driving emotional connection through every single touch point. And it's all about emotion. Like why a consumer will pick your brand over another brand is because the feelings that they will have, or that emotional connection they will have to your story, how you look, how you show up. And I'm just going to give you some examples of brands that I've worked on over the last 20 years or so. So as Alison said, a lot of my story today is actually going to centre on Connacht Rugby, and I'm going to talk to you about Connacht Rugby. So Connacht Rugby is one of the smallest provinces playing rugby in Ireland. So Ireland is obviously made up of 4 provinces, with Connacht being the smallest and the one, I suppose, in the west of Ireland, with the least number of clubs, I suppose, and the least number of funding. But defiant and despite all odds, how Connacht Rugby rose to success through driving emotional connections and through telling about our story and our brand identity. So I'm going to talk to you about that later. But I suppose firstly, just a little bit about me. So again, it's Misha Mehain Kate Tussett. So who about me? As Alison said, I'm from Galway. I was born and raised here. I'm from a farming background, very small farming background, but from a large family. And I suppose when it came to choosing my university and starting off in my education, I chose to go local here to the National University of Ireland in Galway, one of the top 1% universities in the world. And there I was very fortunate to, I suppose, start my educational journey, which really gave me sound foundation stones for building my marketing career over the next 20 years or so. So I did a Bachelor of Commerce degree in marketing, and then I completed it with a Master's of Business Studies and a postgraduate HDip in marketing, all specializing in marketing. And I suppose just learning the tricks of my trade and setting up my career with a strong, solid education foundation. As a result of the education I received at NUI Galway, they actually put me forward for a graduate program back in 2003 for Unilever. So I'm sure many people on the call and on the webinar are familiar with Unilever, one of the world's biggest and largest consumer goods companies. Something like 150,000 Unilever products are bought every second across the world. So I was very fortunate to join Unilever back in 2003 as a very young graduate, learning the tricks of my trade, and learning how essentially you grow brands. So on that graduate program, which I completed over in Ireland and in the UK for about 2 or 3 years, I worked primarily on their ice cream brands, right? So lots of fun, some local jewels in there like Cornettos and Brunches, but also some global icons like Cornetto and Magnum, and got to deal with teams across the world in Italy and in France and in Germany, and represent Ireland from a Unilever perspective. One of the brands, I suppose, that really stood the test of time in those early days for me was Ben & Jerry's. So again, Ben & Jerry's, a real game changer. Again, if you think this is back 20 years ago, talking about sustainability, talking about eco-friendly, talking about giving back to the farmers that produce the milk to make the ice cream. So again, a really game-changing brand ahead of its time. And really driving that sustainability and CSR story. So I learned a lot through managing Ben & Jerry's in this time. So moving on from ice creams, and one of the big things with Unilever, I spent 8 years in total with Unilever. So really just moving from category to category. So on average, I kind of spent 2 years on ice cream, then I moved 2 years onto deodorants and hair care. So really just kind of learning about consumer understanding, consumer insights, consumer branding. And I suppose after 2 or 3 years, I was promoted to being the senior brand manager of the Lynx brand. And again, I suppose this was my first foray into really understanding consumers and not being, the consumer core target myself. Because obviously Lynx was a brand, it's all about the Lynx effect, or if you're in Europe, the Axe effect, all about, driving masculine confidence and, driving their appeal to in the mating game. So I had lots of fun with the Lynx brand, and again, just developing some global campaigns and local campaigns, just really telling the Lynx story and brand story in a fun, quirky, irreverent way, and essentially not taking ourselves too seriously. So on the back of the work then that I did on Lynx, I actually got promoted just as the campaign for Real Beauty was breaking across the globe. And again, to this day, it still is one of the most kind of profound and compelling campaigns I've ever worked on. So at the time, if you think of it, Dove essentially was a bar soap, right? So it was a bar soap that was known for being, 1/4 moisturizing cream, won't dry your skin like other soaps can. Essentially, it was very much a functional promise. And at the time, all our competitors, Dove was about number 3 player in the marketplace. And at the time, as I said, the competitors, like everyone in the beauty industry, was driving this stereotypical, unaspirational view or unattainable view of beauty. Showing models. You have to be stick thin. You have to be super young. And again, that women. It was based on insight that women, essentially less than 4% of them of Irish women would have described themselves as beautiful at the time. So again, it was very much like, look, every woman has a right to feel beautiful in their own skin, be it, regardless of age, size, ethnicity. So what we wanted was we essentially built the campaign for Real Beauty. So really challenging the stereotypical view of beauty that was out there in the media. And again, obviously, this was a time just as social media and internet and digital marketing was breaking. So essentially, our campaign was very much, a traditional kind of billboard, above the line, press advertising, PR, really to rally Manana Heron or the women of Ireland to challenge that stereotypical viewpoint, and that you could essentially be beautiful in your own skin, regardless of, as I said, your age or your size or whatever it was. And I'm pleased to say, I suppose, not only did we challenge stereotypes, not only did we develop a kind of world category shattering campaign for Dove at the time, which obviously others have tried to emulate ever since. But we really, I suppose, achieved financial success as well and market success, that we moved Dove from being a number 3 position in the Irish marketplace to being a number 1 market leader. So that was a fantastic time. And as I said, I spent 5 years working really, really hard on the campaign for Real Beauty and on the Dove brand. But at the time, I suppose Ireland was in recession or hitting into recession, and Unilever, despite their size as a big, massive global entity, said, look, why do we need marketeers sitting in Dublin when we have a team in London? So actually they merged the UK and Ireland team. And even though I got an opportunity to go work in the UK, essentially one thing you'll hear about my story today is I'm essentially a home bird. And I said, absolutely, I was living in Dublin at the time. And I said, listen, the only place I want to move is I want to move back west. So I actually opted for redundancy. So I took redundancy at the time, and this was 2011, as I said, and I moved from one Dutch company to actually another Dutch company. So I moved into Heineken and Heineken Ireland. And there I said, again, another global icon, another absolute giant in its industry. It was my first foray into alcohol marketing and drinks marketing. And I took the job as a brand sponsorship manager. So again, now I had kind of gone from being, a generalist in terms of a marketing manager on Dove to honing in on a particular area of marketing around sponsorship. And within my remit was rugby, soccer, and music. So I remember saying at the time, geez, if Carlsberg did jobs, this would be the job, only for it was Heineken, because obviously rugby, soccer, music, you're talking about people's passion points, you're talking about fun, you're talking about telling your brand story in an emotive and engaging way through areas of interest. Again, rugby, really highly passionate, soccer, music. And at the time, I suppose one of my lessons was, I was still relatively young at the time, I knew very little about rugby. I knew very little about the specifics of, a high tackle or a dummy pass or a loop around. But I remember working for a marketing director at the time, and she, like me, was like, we were new to sports, we were new to alcohol. And I remember her saying, you don't have to be a dog to market dog food. But what you do have to know is you need to know your consumer, and you need to know your brand and your product, and you need to know how to connect the two. So for me, that was really what rugby, or the creative you see here. I made 5 TV ads for Heineken in that time, and it was all centering around the Heineken European Cup, where the ball essentially was the pint. So again, we were putting the product front and center, but done so in an engaging way. So our consumer, our Jack the lad, was in the pub with his mates, and essentially we brought the story to life through their passion points. So I had to learn very quickly about what a high tackle was, as I said, what a non-releasing pass was in rugby. But again, just learning about the consumer, learning about your product and how your product plays in their world, and then really driving that emotive connection. And as I said, this was my first foray into rugby marketing. And we will fast forward 10 years later, where, again, you join the dots. It's something you learn at the start of your career or midway through your career, actually might be beneficial for when you go on into the future. So you never know, I suppose, where your career is going to end up. So after my time in Heineken, I decided to take a little break. So again, at the time, I think I was just turning 30. I always say I had my midlife crisis at 30. So I was, took a career break for a couple of months. I, jumped out of planes. I traveled around the world. I swam with dolphins, did all that good stuff. And just, I suppose it was a life lesson at the time, because people told me, God, you're crazy. You're giving up all your work in these amazing companies to go and take a break. But again, it shows, and I think everyone realizes that as we're going through, more challenging times right now, that the importance of switching off and the importance of, I suppose, really depugging and unplugging and recuperating and doing some self-reflection. So I will never ever regret the couple of months I spent doing that. But I suppose reality hit after a couple of months, and bills to pay, and I suppose it was time to get back in on the hamster wheel again. And at the time, Ireland, as I said, was sort of coming out of recession at this stage, and I suppose I wanted to join a company, firstly, that I valued, that had really strong values, but also I knew would have kind of international prowess behind the parent company. And I was very fortunate, because at the time, Irish Distillers Pernod Ricard, or Irish Distillers Limited, were recruiting for the Irish for the Irish market. They were recruiting a marketing manager for the Irish market. And I suppose I knew very little about IDL before I went into it, but one of the things that I suppose attracted me firstly was, they had a a brand in Jameson, you know, they've been around since 1780. They had some gorgeous brands like Powers, like Paddy Whiskey, you know, and again, I suppose then they had the international brands from their parent company, Pernod Ricard, as well. So there was a lovely mix of Irish and international. But at the core were their values. You know, so again, they celebrated conviviality. So again, people having fun and enjoying what they do and building passion brands. So what I would say to you is, you know, as you're building your enterprise plans and your workplaces, you know, what are the values? What do you stand for? Because again, that will attract talent and it will attract both consumers and employees in to join your force and your brand. So anyway, I suppose I started in the Irish market. Purely looking after Ireland. And I know we have a lot of people from Sweden and we have a lot of people from Norway on the call. So I'm delighted to say one of my first brands was this global iconic brand from Sweden, Absolute Vodka. So it was all about, and again, I suppose an iconic brand in the category where had always challenged stereotypes, had built art conventions, celebrated the LGBT community, just always, I suppose, zagged when others zigged. So I absolutely loved working on the Absolute brand and bringing that to life. Again, one of the really strong things we established on the Absolute brand was what is the brand experience? So how do we differentiate ourselves from all the other generic vodkas that are out in the category? So we honed in on art. And we honed in on art and creativity and inspiring artists and just even here for the Irish people on the call, they'd be aware of the Galway International Arts Festival. So we got in very early and sponsored the Arts Festival, and we built a brand experience around, you know, supporting and amplifying the sponsorship through a brand experience which we called putting the art in party. Because again, you know, Absolute is obviously it's an alcoholic brand. It's about convivial moments, creating a better tomorrow, tonight. But we did that in wrapping it up in a very artistic way. So lots and lots of fun and creativity, and I suppose driving those emotional connections through telling the story and through leveraging an industry that we felt, you know, kind of matched with our values. So that was a fantastic exercise on the Absolute brand. But then in 2015, I moved to the international team on Jameson. And again, I suppose for all of you who might be aware, like Jameson is obviously the leader in the Irish whiskey category. It has driven a revolution in Irish whiskey. You know, and again, exports of Irish whiskey are up 200%, 300%. Predicted to boom. At the time, back in 2015, there was 4 operating distilleries on the island of Ireland. I think now there's a guts of 30. So again, this revolution and this, I suppose, renaissance of Irish whiskey was really driven by Jameson. But at the time, back in 2015, we had no strategy, to be honest. We had no innovation strategy. You know, 98% of our sales were coming from core Jameson. There was all these new craft brewers and craft distilleries coming in and kind of eating in on Jameson's lunch. So what we needed to do was really future-proof and protect the Jameson brand through innovation. So at the time we said, okay, look, again, tapping into your target consumer, their passion points, what are they interested in? And as I said, at the time, it was all about craft beer and craft breweries and experimentation through craft beers. So we actually, Jameson is made down in Cork, in Middleton in County Cork. And in Cork, there's this craft brewery called Franciscan Well Brewery. And at the time, and again, it just shows that good product ideas can come from anywhere. Our master distiller was finishing up his week's work one day, went into the brewery, was having a pint and a whiskey, got chatting to the head brewer, and they concocted a plan to swap some barrels so that, you know, the brewer would put some creamy Irish stout into our whiskey barrels. We would extract that stout. He would have a barrel-aged whiskey, and then what remained was a stout-influenced craft beer barrel. So we poured the whiskey back in, and now all of a sudden came Castmates, this delicious new product that was born out of a conversation amongst friends, and it took the world by storm. So hopefully my next slide will tell you the Castmates story.
All started when our master distiller sent our barrels to the master brewer at the Franciscan Well Brewery to make a Jameson seasoned stout. The result was a hit, but the experiment didn't stop there. Barrels made their way back to the Jameson distillery, full of new stout character from their sabbatical at Franciscan Well. The whiskey that emerged was still Jameson, but this was singing a different tune. Delicious new notes of butterscotch, milk chocolate, and coffee. The name came somewhat naturally, Jameson Caskmates. We had a hunch we were onto something, so our first port of call was a place where honesty is never in short supply, Ireland, our own backyard. We rounded up a few of our mates, friends, family, and a few customers as well. It was the perfect arrangement. They got first taste bragging rights, and we were able to watch, listen, and soak up all the learnings we could. And they reacted just as we'd hoped. It was love at first sip. Jameson Caskmates allowed us to pull up a bar stool with craft beer drinkers, and bartenders took it even further, showing them new ways to enjoy our whiskey. It soon became clear that this was a secret we couldn't keep to ourselves, and the initial batch didn't stay on the shelves for long. As word began to spread, we rolled out a bank of assets to help the rest of the world prepare for launch. The Jameson Caskmates World Tour kicked off, and it popped up at unique events around the world. Global buzz and momentum was rolling right along. Jameson Caskmates found itself being enjoyed in markets all over the world. When we looked at the numbers, nothing could prepare us for the first results that flowed in. We knew this couldn't be down to luck alone, and soon realized we were going to need a bigger cask. Jameson and beer, together at cask, creating new ways for people to enjoy whiskey. Goes to show that new ideas can come from anywhere, and sometimes that place is a pub stool.
Where does that lead to?
So again, I hope that little video just demonstrates, again, drive an emotional connection. What is of importance to our target consumer? How do we bring them, their passion points in an emotive way? And then obviously digital storytelling, even something as simple as an animatic there that you've seen, just telling the success story of Jameson Caskmates on a global level. So on the back of Jameson Caskmates, then what I was asked to do was look at our communications on the Jameson brand across its 137 markets globally. So in 2017, I took over the role as head of global comms, and just really rebuilt a communications architecture across above the line, below the line, digital, social media for the Jameson brand. And these are just some of the markets that that year brought me to. So I was in Singapore, in Shanghai, in Chicago, in Sweden, Florida, Joburg, Milan, you name it, and chances were I traveled the world. But as I said at the start, you can never go away from what's in your heart, and essentially I am a very much a home bird. So when I read this particular quote, it really resonated with me. And it is said that one can travel the world over in search of what they are looking for, only to return home to find it. So that's exactly what I did. I realized that my family were at home, my connections were at home, my heart was essentially in Galway, on the west coast of Ireland. So what I did at the time was I obviously had been traveling the world, selling the story of Irish whiskey globally, but I'd always was looking for that opportunity to move back home. And I suppose for me, as you can see, it's about the brand and the storytelling behind the brand. And I was very, I suppose, precious that I didn't want to just go work for anybody, but I really wanted to work with a brand that I was inspired by, that had a fantastic story. And again, that I could add something to telling their story. So as I said, I joined Connacht Rugby just 3 years ago. And just to give you a little bit of background behind Connacht Rugby. So Connacht Rugby, as I said, is one of 4 provinces in the island of Ireland playing professional rugby. It was established in 1885. So again, if you think about what was happening back in Ireland back then, we weren't long out of, Irish famine, home rule, and the 6 enterprising clubs came together to form the Connacht Rugby branch of the Irish Rugby Football Union, so that people from across the province could essentially enjoy the game of rugby. And that very much still remains at heart of everyone involved with Connacht Rugby today. And I have to say, and again, it's back to the importance of purpose-driven marketing. It was the purpose of Connacht Rugby that really inspired me to join the team and to help develop their story over the last 3 or 4 years. Because at Connacht Rugby, our purpose as an organisation is to inspire our community through rugby success. But we always say that it's much, much more than just rugby, and that rugby is only a conduit, that we really make a real and lasting impact on the community in the west of Ireland. And it is our people and the place that really make the difference. So all along, you know, as I said, Connacht Rugby was pretty much the underdog of Irish rugby back in 2016, you know, or back in 2013, excuse me, or the existence of Connacht Rugby came into question. And I suppose the supporters and the people behind Connacht Rugby, you know, rallied on the government, marched on to the Irish government to really ensure the existence of Connacht Rugby. So it was that groundswell, that passion, that never say die determination of the people of the west of Ireland that is innate and ingrained in the DNA of the people of Connacht and the people of the west of Ireland. So much so that a mere 3 years later, this was the scenes in Galway where Connacht Rugby became the champions of Europe. And again, it impacted whether you were from a Gaelic background, a soccer background, a rugby background, or no sporting background at all. You fundamentally had pride and passion and belief in terms of where you were from. So it's that impact on the community and on the community of the west of Ireland that really inspired and the joy that sport can bring to the people of Ireland. Because at Connacht Rugby, again, you know, our vision is about grassroots to green shirts. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. So this, I suppose the premise behind this vision is all about you can be anything you want to be. So be you from the west of Ireland, the east of Ireland, the south of Ireland, wherever you're from, it's not that you let the place that you're from restrict you in terms of your ambitions, okay? So from the grassroots, so from a rural village in the west of Ireland, you can go on to play for the Green Shirts of Connacht or indeed the Green Shirts of Ireland. So again, if you're a marketeer, you can be born in Galway, born in Sligo, born, you know, whatever village, rurally, and you can fundamentally, because through your belief and through your vision and through hard work, you can achieve the top of your game, okay? And again, I chose this picture very purposefully because on the left there is Bevan Parsons. So she is a 17-year-old student from Banlasloe in County Galway. So again, a very rural part of Galway in the west of Ireland. Last year, she was named, at 17 years of age, she was named Ireland's professional women's team's #1 try scorer. And she is 17 years of age. She completed her Leaving Cert or her high school education last year and has now gone on to study medicine, right? And the little girl on the right-hand side is my niece, Holly, who is 9 years of age. And again, it's around the whole premise of can't see, can't be. So Holly needs, you know, role models and icons like Bevan that she can look up to and she can inspire to be and believe that she can be. So from a grassroots perspective, she can achieve the very top of her game, be it at rugby, be it at marketing, be it at enterprise, be it at yoga teaching, whatever it is that you can absolutely achieve and be the best you can be. And essentially that is the vision that is at Connacht Rugby, and that is the vision that permeates as an organization. And it's something that, you know, we really bring to life. And we summed it up in a phrase that, again, we got all players, coaches, management, leaders, volunteers to build in behind. And essentially it's this, that we call it the Connacht way, in the sense that we have pride in where we have come from, we have belief in where we are going, and we have the ambition to succeed. So again, it's that sense of we know our DNA, we know our history, we know our background, we've pride in that, and that's part of our story, it's part of our emotional fabric. We have belief in where we're going. So again, we're looking to the future, we believe in ourselves, we have that innate personality in the sense of a belief for our vision, and we have the ambition to succeed. And again, that is fundamentally, and I think this could apply to anyone on the call today. So again, just understanding where you've come from, understanding and believing in yourself in terms of where you want to go to, and really having that ambition and self-belief, because it's hard at times, but again, it's back to your purpose, it's back to your vision, it's why you want to exist, why you want to operate. And again, you know, 3 of the core values at Connacht Rugby are ambition, belief, and community. So ambition, just last year, pre-COVID, we secured 20 million euros in government funding to redevelop the home of Connacht Rugby. because again, I suppose vis-a-vis the other three provinces, our stadium probably wouldn't be at the same level as a Leinster or a Munster. And really what we wanted to do was redevelop the sports ground in the west of Ireland to be a beacon for rural development and west of Ireland development. And we really had that ambition in terms of, this is for the people and for the people of west of Ireland. And it was going to be game changing and will be game changing again, when we get out of this COVID world. So we secured that funding. And as soon as COVID is over, we will absolutely start the redevelopment and the building of our sports ground. But essentially it's about your people. And again, part of the emotional connection and the brand storytelling and even building our season ticket campaigns, it's about the people behind the brand. Because if you're in Connacht Rugby, you buy into the vision, it's authentic, it's not just a slogan on the wall, it's something everyone lives and breathes and gets up every single day and works hard and fights for. So it really is that sense of belief and ambition in terms of where we're headed as an organisation, as a province, as a region. And essentially community. It's about putting the unity in community, just like the art and party, joining together our 5 counties across the west of Ireland and really uniting in them that sense of pride, that sense of community, that sense of belief, that sense of ambition. And we do that at a grassroots level. We do that in Galway City. We do that right across the 4 corners of the 5 counties. So again, I think when you have a really strong, solid foundation and you can tell your story and that drives an emotional connection, it can be really compelling. And again, I suppose when you look at sport is obviously, I'm sure many are on the call saying, again, it's a passion point. Sport, it's people buy into it, you buy into the highs, the lows and everything in between. But I suppose for me as a marketeer and driving the story of Connacht Rugby, I looked up the definition of sport and I think it was the Oxford Dictionary that says, it's social good arising out of activity. And that really led me to say, look, as marketing activities and digital storytelling, how are we driving social good out of the activities that Connacht Rugby do? And even though we may be the smallest of all the provinces, everything we do, we want to drive that social good out of the activities that we do. So I'm going to show you just how we brought that essence and that activity and that inspiration to life. And I suppose what this really demonstrates as well is the importance of taking some time out going, what do I stand for? Where do I want to be? What are my core values? And how am I emulating those through my storytelling, through my activities? So I'm going to introduce you to this particular man. This is an individual, again, he's from a very rural part of the west of Ireland called Portumna, typically a hurling territory within the Galway and within the west of Ireland. His name is John Muldoon, and he is the longest serving Irish player of any of the 4 provinces, and he is the most capped player ever in the Pro 14. So all in, John Muldoon earned 327 caps wearing the Connacht jersey. And he also earned a few Irish caps as well. But essentially it was coming to John's end of his long 18-year stint with Connacht Rugby. He became an embodiment of the brand. So everything that was good about Connacht Rugby fundamentally could have been, summed up in the integrity, the leadership, the characteristics of this gentleman. So when he was leaving, I suppose I was tasked with, developing a campaign fitting that we could pay tribute to his long-serving legacy in Connacht Rugby. And I essentially developed a campaign called Thanks Mull. And again, I suppose this campaign has been now replicated. We had an Irish international, CJ Sander, leaving at the weekend, and the campaign essentially was around Thanks CJ, which is great. But essentially with Thanks Mull, what we wanted to do was, this wasn't about Connacht Rugby. This was actually about the people at the grassroots level, the children, the adults, the senior citizens, everyone who enjoyed John Muldoon's 17 or 18 years as captain of Connacht. So we went out to the province. We went to the butcher shops, the baker shops, the schools, the clubs, and we got everyone to pay their thanks through the hashtag Thanks Mull. And as you can see there, on match day, on his very last game, where Connacht were playing Leinster, we covered the grounds with all tributes to him. We made some very emotive digital storytelling videos. There was a standing ovation for John Muldoon, and not a sinner left the sports ground. And I'm happy to say, I suppose I started the campaign again, not from are we going to beat Leinster on the day? What's the score going to be? It was more about emotion, right? And essentially, I, as a female in a very man's world, set out my campaign objective as being, I want to make grown men cry. And again, I check out the video. It's Thanks Small. It's on Connacht Rugby's YouTube channel. Again, it was really storytelling about John Muldoon and the impact he had on people. So again, this wasn't around, the scrum lineouts he won, or the balls, or the number of captaincies. This was about his impact and the emotional connection he had with the men and women and the children of the west of Ireland. So I suppose that's him there. And as I said, he's a fine big man. So I made him cry anyway. So I achieved my objectives. But actually, again, it just shows I wanted to drive emotion. I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to tell his story and pay homage to him. And again, it was a really successful campaign. But again, it was back to, again, I was entering into an organization that probably needed a little bit of help in terms of defining our brand, defining what we stood for. And so I told this story.
This is our beating heart, where it all starts. Much more than just a battleground for our own corner and crest. Here, buds of character collide and form, and the seeds of dreams are sown and nurtured. Mentors, teachers, groundskeepers, never front page, but always there for the game we love and the community at our core. This is the place we treasure. And even in the fog of war, hit after hit, run after run, try after try, win, lose or draw, respect is the result we all share. From the four corners of the 5 counties, always united for our one province. Because when roots are strong, we all grow.
So again, I just hope that shows kind of driving that emotional connection, driving the 4 corners, the 5 counties. When our roots are strong, we all grow. And essentially that again was very much, we're kind of asking ourselves, why do we do what we do? And, it's summed up in this photograph here. It's about the young people. It's about people getting active. It's about driving social activity. It's about a sense of belonging. And essentially, so I put a lot of energy into that grassroots activity. So again, making our rugby camps bigger, better, getting boys and girls, 50% female, 50% male, just driving fun through social interaction, through activity, and really driving that sense of united spirit and engagement. One of the parts I suppose that I felt was very underdeveloped as well was the presence of females in, I suppose, both our marketing activities, but also our shining a spotlight on our women's game. So myself and the head of domestic rugby, a fantastic guy by the name of Joe Gorham, we've set out building our Women of the West 4-year strategy about how we could grow female participation in our games. And it's back to my little niece in terms of can't see, can't be. She can't see her female heroes playing and succeeding on the sports pitch, but also in the professional arena. She can't aspire to be that. So a lot of our comms changed and a lot of our initiatives changed. So one of the most fundamental changes we made during this time was when we were negotiating our sponsorship rights with our big players like Guinness and Heineken and Bank of Ireland and Leia Healthcare, who traditionally would have only been interested in the male's professional game. We said, no, if you want to be part of Connacht Rugby, you have to sponsor the women's game as well. So as a result, we got a large injection of sponsorship and money into developing the West of Ireland women's game. And I'm proud to admit as well, that at the end of the 3 years, we were the first Irish province and the first of any Irish IRFU club to have a female president. So currently Anne Hennigan is our president of Connacht Rugby. So again, it's just, I suppose, driving change and driving, I suppose, strategy for the betterment of all, for driving equality and diversity within sport in Ireland. We also took Connacht on a world stage. We brought our teams and our underage teams to Boston and started driving international associations with teams in Boston and in New York. So again, putting our small province and our small teams on a global and international stage. This was St. Patrick's Day 2 years ago. Unfortunately, probably the last time there was a St. Patrick's Day around the world, but we were cheered on by 1 million people on the streets of Boston. We met the mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, a man from Connemara, again, who's just been announced as Joe Biden's Labour secretary. So again, it is people from the west of Ireland or from rural communities really making a difference on an international stage. As I said, we do a lot of work, again, driving diversity, driving inclusion. We partnered with the Special Olympics. Again, they're very much a core partner of ours at the sports ground. So all the coaches and the players, they get access to our facilities. The coaches are being coached by our coaches. So again, there's a real sense of camaraderie, a real sense of community, and just again, really driving what we say through activities and driving inclusivity and being open for all. As I said, getting young children out, being mascots, enjoying the game. The photo there in the bottom left is Eric Elwood, who's an Irish international. He heads up our young academy, and he takes time out of his schedule to go on a foggy, wet winter's night training the young players of the future, assisted by like Jack Carty, who again, another Irish international. As I said, we do a lot of work with inclusivity and the children of players with mixed abilities, that they get out to be on the sports grounds, they get to play our minis. So really is at the heart of our community. And I suppose one of the core things I did as well coming in was this was our brand identity. This is our logo. And at the time I kind of felt, I'd love to optimize this. I'd love to optimize how we're presenting ourselves, how we're presenting our brand identity, so that it really tells a story about who we are and what we stand for. And again, hopefully that you'll get some tips in terms of your own business, your own logo, your own brand identity. So this was, as I said, the logo at the time. And I looked in our competitive set, right? So if you just even take the 14 teams playing at a Pro 14 European level, on the bottom there, you'll see the 4 Irish provinces. And we're all wrapped up in this ball. So they're all pretty samey. Everyone was wrapped up in a rugby ball. There was either an animal team going on or a shield team. And I just said, look, you know what, we could actually do better. And the 2 Welsh teams that I've up there, the Ospreys and Scarlets, I actually felt that they were the most iconic kind of brand signifiers or brand logos. They were quite striking. And you can imagine these on a 60-foot poster or even been reduced down small into a URL bar on a computer screen. So I just thought they were quite iconic logos given the competitive set. So with Connacht, as I said at the start, in terms of our purpose, we feel it's much more than rugby. So we make an impact on the community that's bigger than rugby. It's about people, it's about place. So essentially what I wanted to do was I wanted to break Connacht out of the rugby ball that we were restricted within. And I wanted to drive that sense of place. So here's what I did. Okay, so you can hopefully see there, again, the best brand evolution through brand identity. They don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, they evolve rather than revolt. So again, if you look at iconic brands like Cadbury's, like Coca-Cola, even Jameson, brands with 200, 300 years of heritage, and you Google how they evolve, it's actually quite minimal in terms of the optimization, but it's quite subtle. So what I wanted to do with Connacht's new brand identity was I wanted to keep obviously what we stood for in terms of the eagle and the sword. So I actually just sharpened up the eagle. I gave it 5 wingtips. So again, to represent each of the 5 counties. I made its head more statuesque and more strong and solid, and the sword pointing upwards denotes ambition. So again, it really like you're ready to fight, you're confident, you're strong, you're ready, future forward, you're ready to go. And then with the typeface as well, I gave it a Gaeltacht A, so a nod to or a Celtic A, a nod to our Gaeltacht heritage. And I centered rugby and probably decreased it in size, that it was just more about Connacht. It was just more about the place and where we're from as Connacht. So again, just really optimized that brand identity. I'm going to leave you or finish up on this just around, because obviously we're all in business here today. But I think there's great lessons that we can learn and take from sport and the world of sport and business. And I'm not sure if you recognize this gentleman. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but as a leader, and some of his books that he wrote on leadership and his leadership principles, I actually I love, and I have them all. But again, because he's just a candid, no nonsense, straight talking person. This is, of course, Jack Welch, who was the former CEO of General Electric, and he rebuilt and reformed General Electric into the global giant that it is today. But he's a very passionate sportsman, and he says, I love sport for the same reason I love business. They're both games, and winning happens in the same 4 ways. So in order to succeed at sport and in business, you need to play with all your heart and soul. No reservations, be all in. You need to relentlessly delight your fans, who are your customers. You need to know and fear your opponents. And finally, have fun. Lots and lots of fun. And if you lose, which happens even to the greatest of teams, shake it off and get ready and better for the next go. So I'm going to leave you with 3 simple things just from my personal perspective in terms of what I've learned down through the years. Firstly, integrity is everything. And again, you guys know this, but no matter who you're dealing with, it could be a CEO, it could be a receptionist, it could be a janitor, it could be a pitch liner, it could be a teacher, whoever it is that you obviously encounter. What I would say is, like, look, regardless of the size of your enterprise, the size of your brand, that integrity is everything. And when you get the ball, or take the ball and run with it, sometimes we don't know where the dots will join up in the future. You just have to take a chance. You just have to take the ball and see where it's going to lead you with. And just something I've learned just personally from me is around keeping and building your portfolio, because all the time you're learning. You don't know where things are going to lead you to, what opportunity, what project, what encounter, what network contact you build. You don't know where that's going to lead you to. So what I would say is, keep and build your portfolio, keep and build your network, your contacts, and obviously grow and follow up on those, as Noreen talked about this morning. So I suppose the whole theme of this presentation has been around how my global experience has brought me back home to the west of Ireland. And here is just a short brand film that I made to bring this to life.
This is the place on the far edge of the Atlantic, the place that nourishes us, body and mind, the place that has spawned presidents, poets, prophets, engineers and entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, and artisans. This is a place that hustles and bustles with energy and light. A place aware of its past. but certain of its future. The place we live and love.
Sorry.
The place others believe they know. But we know better. This is a place defined not by geography, climate, or history, but by its people. This is a place some call Connacht, but we call home.
So folks, I'm going to leave you on that. I hope you enjoyed hearing the story of Connacht. I hope you enjoyed the sense of connection, of driving storytelling through really connecting with who you stand for as a brand, who you stand for as an organization, and driving that connection in an emotive and authentic way. As I said, it's been my pleasure to be with you today. I'm just going to stop sharing now. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, please reach out to me. I hope you've enjoyed the story, and again, that you've got some inspiration for your own brand, for your own organization, for your own enterprise. So thank you very much for listening.
Nicola, thank you very, very much. And I'm sure everyone can agree that that was very thought-provoking and definitely played my heartstrings. And I can see the emotional storytelling definitely coming through. It's brilliant, and that's not the first time I've seen that presentation, and it still nearly brought me to tears.
Oh, thanks, Alison.
But it's great to see, like, even as you say there, I just want to say that Noreen's presentation this morning had talked a lot about the networking aspect, and then in your presentation, you can see that underlying topic of having role models, as you say, having your niece look up to the older role models who are playing for Ireland or whatever team it may be. And
totally.
Definitely. It's crucial. And the unintentional thing of this is our panel discussion tomorrow morning, which starts at 9, is actually looking at both of those topics, which are role models and networking. So I think it's crucial, and it shows just how evident or how strong it is and needed within female entrepreneurship.
100%. And what I would say is, obviously, the global brands like the Heinekens and the Jamesons of this world, yes, they've big budgets, but everything we did at Connacht Rugby was done on little to no budget, right? Mm-hmm. It was essentially done through connections, through relationships, through the power of genuine connections. And that's what I'd say to everyone today is, again, being invited over to Boston, that was done by, reaching out to an Irish Boston Irish guy who was ex-Connemara. He, came over and he was like, come join us for St. Patrick's Day. So again, never underestimate the power of the connections that you make. And it's funny because, even through university, and that's where Alice and I met you for the first time ever. That was my association going back lecturing at the university level, was done over a cup of coffee with one of the lecturers in the university. So again, never underestimate that anyone that you meet here today, over the next 3 days, where they can show up in your future and how you can achieve some great role models, some great learnings, and do some great business and fun and relationships together.
Exactly. Nicola, you've summed it up. And as I see here from Pavi's comment, we might have a few more followers of Connacht Rugby across the water.
Absolutely. Look, some passionate supporters cheering on the green jersey. So we'll always take that. So listen, thanks to everyone. There's lovely comments coming through there. I'm glad you all enjoyed the presentation. As I said, reach out, join me in LinkedIn. If there's anything ever I can do, I'm happy to help. As I said, look, I don't have the magic formula. I'm just, a hardworking lady in the west of Ireland, just trying to do my best, like us all here on this call today.
Exactly. Nicola, we'll leave it there. And thanks very much again.
Super. Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.